I'll try to keep my introductions short because we have done that in the last session that we attended. But yeah, thank you for joining us today. This is the second session of the 4 that we have planned with X10X, a business accelerator that makes the scale-up journey easier for entrepreneurs. And that's what we need as entrepreneurs. First session, as you recall, was conducted around people excellence. We found the session, I hope you found the session interesting and useful. In true Ascent style, we always take feedback, and the feedback has been 4.3 out of 5, and some very good feedback on how we can keep improving the sessions going forward. So we tried to take a lot of that into consideration and used it for this session today. It's going to be on company operating systems, wherein we'll be discussing on strategy to execution, what, how, and why of OKRs, a 10-step approach to OKR process, and business finance matrices. As you're aware, the session has been co-created exclusively for Ascent members with X10X, and it is my sincere request that kindly engage actively, kindly be part of all the conversation, and derive the maximum value from each session that we are doing. So today's session on company operating system will be hosted by Neeraj. You are aware of him. He did the session for us last time as well. And he's been joined by Anusha Gopalakrishnan, also from the X10X team today. So over to you, Neeraj and Anusha.
Thank you, Archana. Sorry, before we get going, I'm going to request Anusha to do a very quick introduction for herself. Anusha, by the way, leads our OKR practice in our company and very, very accomplished at installing OKR in many, many companies across the country now. Anusha, why don't you give a quick introduction and then we can get going.
Thanks, Neeraj. Happy to see all of you. Looking forward to this session today. So as Neeraj mentioned, I lead the OKR services vertical here. I've been with the company for close to 2 years now. In about 3 months, I'll complete 2 years. Prior to this, I've had about 11 years of experience across different domains. I started off as a manufacturing engineer, spent a good 5 years working in a shop floor as a process engineer for Dell. Post that, I moved to Walmart, where I was leading the China store productivity initiatives. I spent about 1.5 years there. And after that, I moved to Flipkart, where I was leading the last mile expansion program for eCart, where we scaled up eCart's presence from 3,800 pin codes to 10,000 pin codes. Post that, did a quick stint internationally. I went to Indonesia. I was working in Jakarta for about a year, heading the business process re-engineering division at a publicly listed company called Erajaya Group. After that, I came back to Bangalore and joined X10X to lead the OKR services practice. That's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Anusha. Just to give all of you a very, very quick introduction about today's session and what is it that we're going to talk about in the 2 hours today. So today's session is on a topic called the company operating system. We believe in X10X that there are 10 critical pillars that are important for a company to scale well and for a company to be run well. One of them is called the company operating system. And what is the company operating system? This is really how you run the company from within. So we introduced you to the people excellence pillar last time around. That is one of the pillars. But this one is what we call a foundational pillar in the company, which is how do you run the company very effectively from within? I'm sure a lot of you, as your team has scaled from 50, 100, 200 people over the last few years, you must have found that managing the company, running the company inside, running the company making sure the goals are aligned, making sure that everybody understands what are the big goals the company is going after. And more importantly, that resources are allocated against the most critical initiative only starts to become a bit of a challenge. At least in the Flipkart context, I remember that there was a time when what the founders articulated as big goals for the company and what people in the company were actually working on were two very, very different things. And it became very clear to us that there was a daylight of difference between where the company really wanted to go and what different teams in the company were actually operating on. The second big thing that started happening, that starts to happen in companies is that as companies start to become bigger and as more and more departments start to get formed, you have a marketing team, you have a sales team, you have an operations team, you have a shop floor team, you have an HR team, a finance team. you start to realize that every team starts to operate more and more in a silo. It becomes really hard to be able to drive cross-functional collaboration. Becomes really hard to run any project that needs multiple teams to come together. And frankly, if you think about any company in any context, there is nothing that is important to the company that can be self-contained under one department. So if revenue has to go up, the operations teams have to deliver more and more. Sales teams have to go out and obviously get more revenue for the company. But that requires, for example, the HR teams to hire more. It requires the finance teams to make sure that approvals happen faster. So a lot of teams have to come together even for a goal like revenue, which is typically owned by one team in the company. But if you peel the onion, you'll actually find that there are many, many things that other teams have to do for revenue to actually get sustainably increased, right? So, and that's where the wheels start to come off. That's where companies find it really hard to manage internal collaboration, alignment. As we've spoken to companies who've become 150, 200 members strong, and we ask them, what are your top 3-4 challenges? It's surprising how many people come back and say, outside of leadership hiring, one of the big things that I'm grappling with is how do I get alignment going in my company? As more and more leaders are coming in, and more people are coming in, it's becoming increasingly hard to get all of them to have the same picture of what is it that we are going after together collectively as a team. And that's where the company operating system becomes really important. The leadership that you bring in place, the org structure that you put in place, all of that is the hardwiring, is what we call the hardware of the company. The company operating system is the software of the company. It's how you run the company from inside. It's how you make sure that everybody's aligned, everybody's focused on the most important goals, and that resources, like I said earlier, are spent only on those projects which really, really require attention and no other project. In our own experience in Flipkart, Kyofit, and the many companies that we worked with in the last 2 years, we must have worked with about 70, 80 companies on the company operating system module itself. In our own experience as operators, we found that the OKR methodology was a really, really good one to drive cross-functional collaboration. And I'll explain to you, this whole session is going to be about how can you install OKRs in your context? What do OKRs really mean? How can OKRs create significant velocity in the company in terms of your big goals you're going after? In our own experience, OKRs do several things, but here are some of the most important things that they do for you. One, they allow you to have a common frame for what are the top 3, 4, 5 things that you're all going after together as a company. The starting point to get collaboration going is to actually tell people what are the top 3, 4 things that we really want to go after. The OKRs allow you to do that, number one. Number two, I think OKRs force people, most of the companies that I've been a part of in the past, we used to be very metrics focused, very output focused. And you know what? Cost has to go down, revenue has to go up. And every time during the quarter, the leaders would say, you know what, don't worry, we are on track. Please don't worry, we are on track. And suddenly at the end of the quarter, you come to know that things were never on track. The input thinking was always missing. So OKRs force people to peel off the output metric into sort of input metrics and say, what are the critical inputs that are required to get my output going? And what initiatives do I need to drive for the inputs to start moving? And we'll give you examples of that today also. The third thing that OKRs do is they allow for alignment. They allow for cross-functional collaboration. I think OKRs are wonderful because OKRs allow each person to call out, what do I need from you to make this objective actually happen? Again, we'll give you real examples of how OKRs play out in terms of calling out explicitly what each person needs from everybody else. And that's again something that OKRs are a very powerful methodology for. And then of course, the other advantages are, OKRs allow you to call out how many resources you need for every critical task and every critical project. So all of that also happens in OKRs. And today's session will make all of that very real for each one of you. Anusha, do you want to start sharing the slides now?
Sure.
Before you do that, Anusha, what I wanted to do was also get your reflections, go around the table very quickly. As you think about how your respective companies are running from within, what are your top of mind challenges? What are the top 2, 3 things that you guys have been grappling with that need attention in your own context? Anyone?
I think you said it. I think it's about alignment. Other than the top management, other people, the top, the second line, knowing about the goals, what you want to achieve. I think yeah, although you communicate it, but it's not like a form.
Sorry, Ankit, I think we're losing you. Yeah, Ankit.
Just traveling, maybe that's why there's some challenge. Anybody else who wants to go ahead?
Neeraj, this is Gaurav here. I mean, I think from my perspective, the setting the goals has always been the easier part, but I think the execution plays a more difficult role. Right? I mean, like you said, breaking it down. So we might have a goal of say getting revenue to X.
Basically, there's no formal structure around the communication.
Sorry, go on, Gaurav.
Sorry, Ankit's ghost keeps coming back.
Yes,
but yeah, so for me, it's like the goal setting part of it was not as it's not as difficult. I think we're okay doing that, but then getting the measuring the progress of those goals week in, week out is a challenge for us.
Can I ask you, Gaurav, how do you run that process today? What do you do today? How do you measure week on week progress today?
So we have a weekly update meeting, a one-to-one weekly update meeting with the teams, and we have a monthly MIS session for the whole team that we come together.
Yeah.
But then, if things are not happening, they're just not happening. I mean, it's like there are no recourse to not happening. And today we have a very good excuse called COVID for everything. So, COVID ho gaya to ye nahi ho raha hai, COVID ho gaya to wo nahi ho raha hai.
Yes.
So that's a great excuse we've all got.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, one of the most like you said, goal setting is one part of the whole exercise, but it's really tracking in the course correction that's probably even more important. Running your weekly forums, being able to identify which inputs are actually working out, which inputs are not working out, what needs to be done for those inputs that are not actually working out. I think being able to identify very early on. So, the OKR process is like a early warning system, Gaurav. Because you're going beyond, you're going under the hood and you're looking at the inputs also. It allows you very early on to identify which output is at risk because there are 2-3 critical inputs in a particular output that are just not moving. Right? So we'll talk about that also in today's roundtable. Flipkart, Kyofit, these companies even at this scale run these weekly forums, weekly OKR forums, which actually go through the critical objectives and the critical KRs below them to see what's actually at risk and what's not at risk. It's a very, very powerful forum. We advise like a weekly forum. We'll talk to you about this today also, but it's a very important ritual to have in the company, which is a weekly OKR forum to actually review progress week on week. A quarter is too short. A quarter is 12 weeks, right? And frankly, if things don't get in the first 6-7 weeks, your quarter's goals are never going to get met. So really speaking, you only have the first 6-7 weeks to make the inputs really play out for the output to actually start delivering results for you, and which is why the weekly forum really helps. But we'll talk about that more during the course of the roundtable. Anybody else?
Neeraj, I want to jump in with I have the opposite struggle of what Gaurav mentioned. I think I've moved from a mature business into a up and coming business in waste management, and there are so many directions that we can take, and there's so much that we want to do. And we've also linked performance to the achievement of the targets, which is fairly high for the people who are receiving it. But I'm really struggling between balancing the here and now and what the future can develop. So I find it really hard to narrow it down to 2 or 3 OKRs.
No, it's phenomenal. I think it's lovely that you brought this up. We're going to focus one part of a roundtable today specifically on this question that you raised, Rishit, which is how do you balance out the here and now versus what is going to be required over the next, let's say, 9-12 months? Very easy to lose sight of the future modes while focusing on the day-to-day sort of goals of the company. And OKRs again allow you to call out both the near-term objectives and the long-term ones that must start today for them to actually play out over the next 6, 9, 12 months. So we'll talk about that also in today's roundtable. But OKRs almost, just to give you a 1 second summary, Rishit, OKRs always start with the annual framing of what you want the company to be over the next 1 year. OKRs don't start with saying, what do I want to do over the next 3 months? OKRs start with saying, where do I want this company to be over the next 1 year? What are the top 5 things that I want to accomplish? Now let me work backwards and say, hence, what do I need to accomplish in the first quarter? Many of them are tasks that you will start in the first quarter, but will really give you results only over the next 2-3 quarters because they take that long for a structural project to actually get implemented. So OKRs always begin with starting with an annual frame and then working backwards to say, hence, what needs to start now and what can get accomplished in quarter 1 versus what can get accomplished only in quarter 2 or quarter 3. Yeah. So
you got me really concerned, Neeraj, because I had a change of leadership and I still haven't set my OKRs at the end of August.
No, but well, the silver lining is that OND is starting in a month's time. You have time for OND. So, you must start your planning. And plus the new year is starting in about 4 months time, Rishit. So no better time than now to start your OKR planning process for the whole of next year. And then of course, start the OKR execution from OND onwards and use between now and September end to get a setup going, right? So we'll talk about that also in terms of timelines.
Thanks.
Anything else, guys? I saw a question also on the chat window. I think Devesh spoke about alignment, speedy execution, measuring outputs. Yes, all three are things that are very, very possible in the OKR framework, Devesh. So we'll show you how it actually plays out. Abhishek?
Yeah, so Neeraj, we track numbers, but as you were also talking about the inputs, that what is leading to the numbers, at times that tracking is missing. So we obviously we are a very number centric company, so we are able to track everything almost every week or every alternate week for all the functions. But the challenge is that what activity has been done or not done, which will ultimately result into maybe a fall in number or increase in number, that is not being tracked. And so we are not able to take any action ahead of time. And I can totally relate with what you were saying. And I was also kind of contemplating the idea of OKR. I have heard about it in a few places. So would love to know a lot from you today.
No, absolutely. Look, firstly, Abhishek, let me say that, the position that you find yourself in today, where it's only output numbers being tracked and all sorts of output numbers being tracked, almost all of us have done that for the longest times in our lives, right? All of it, output numbers are the easiest to track. They are the ones that, it becomes easy to instrument and track.
Yeah.
So you're not alone in that. You're not alone in that. That sense, Abhishek. All of us have been there. But like you also said, Abhishek, the one realization at least I've had in running large teams in the past is that if you leave it only to output numbers, frankly, you just don't know. The early warning systems don't work. You just don't know ahead of time what's going on, and you leave You leave it completely to the leader's discretion telling you whether it's going to happen or not happen, and that's not a good place to be in. Not when you have to get into a predictable rhythm of delivering your numbers week after week or month after month.
That's
OKRs allow and force. OKRs force leaders to actually jot down for a particular output to move. What are the 3, 4, 5 things that I need to do from an input standpoint? And for every input, there's an input owner who then can further break it down further to say, for this input to happen, what are the further sub inputs that I need from other people to make this input actually happen? So it's a beautifully crafted framework. It actually flows down several layers in the company. I love it. I've been doing it for the longest time. I can't imagine a workplace without OKRs now that I've done it for 7, 8 years and implemented this in so many other companies. So very, very powerful framework. And by the way, it's becoming very popular in India now. But in the West, for example, in the US, it's been a very, very popular framework for 20 years and used by very early stage companies also. So it's not a process meant only for the large matured companies. No, it's a process that applies to every single, as long as you're running a company, as long as you are working on numbers to be delivered, you must look at it. Okay.
Right.
One request that I will have for all of you as we now start opening up the content for you, and Anusha is going to start taking us through the content very quickly, is please keep your videos on. I said that last time around also. In a virtual roundtable, it's very, very hard to keep the energy going without being able to see each other. And seeing each other actually allows us to feed off your body language. And that's really helpful. Otherwise, it feels like you're talking to a blank screen, and that's very, very hard. Okay, I thank you so much for the some of you who've done that now. All right, let's get going. Anusha, can you please share your screen? I'll take the first couple of slides, Anusha, and then I'll hand it over to you. Okay, you see the title of this slide, Driving Strategy to Execution through OKRs. Why should you use OKRs? It's all right. It's very easy to say, these are my strategic goals. This is what I want to accomplish during the year. OKRs is a framework that allows you to convert your strategic goals into an execution engine at every level in the company. That's the power of OKRs. So we say OKRs are meant for converting your strategy into your execution roadmap. Let's move on to the show. We've done this. We've personally done this in Flipkart, PureFit, Ola, XT10X. We're operators. We've done this in our own companies. That's why the deep learnings have come. What we'll show you today is all of our years of learnings, compressed into simple do's and don'ts. Now, people think about OKRs and say it's a very complex framework. It is not. Please think about OKRs as a very simple framework, and we'll make it even more simple for you today. They're giving you very simple do's and don'ts as to how should you do OKRs and what should you not do in OKRs, right? I spoke about this, in my introduction about what OKRs are all about. There are 6 things that OKRs help you do. Number 1, they help you identify and cascade your most important 3 to 4 goals across the entire company. The first starting point of an OKR process is it forces the leaders and the founders to sit down and say, here are the top 4 or 5 things that really matter to us in the next, let's say, 1 year, and hence in the next one quarter. And these are the 4 or 5 things only that we're going to go after over the next 1 quarter. 2, it forces every leader to break the OKR down that has come his way into inputs. So the top 5 company goals get assigned to individuals in the company. Revenue goal going to the revenue leader, operations, the cost goal going to the finance leader, for example. And then that leader has to break it down to say, if I have to reduce cost, here are the 5 things that I will do this quarter. Number 1, I am going to force my operating teams to improve productivity of people. Number 2, I am going to renegotiate my rental contracts with my landlords. Number 3, I am going to make sure that I'm going to go back to my banks and renegotiate my sort of interest rates that I've signed up my working capital with them on. So once you've got the 4 or 5 big initiatives, it then forces you to then further break them down to say, how will productivity of my operating team go up? Maybe launch of a new tech system, maybe a better incentive program. Who will do the incentive program? Person A, person B, person C will work on the incentive program, do the pilot by so and so time, and deliver the program by so and so time. So you see what's going on? You're taking an overall goal and you're breaking it down into steps and further sub-steps, right? That's the power of an OKR process. To me, point number 2 is one of the most important things in the OKR process. It forces leaders to develop how thinking. Most of us as leaders are very good in output thinking, very, very poor at input thinking. But there's a very old saying, right? That before you start running, think a little bit about your run. Think a little bit about where you want to go, how fast you want to go. The OKR process is all about that. Spend some time planning so that execution becomes better and faster. Number 3, OKRs also call out your big goals and your check metrics. For example, increase revenue by 20% without increasing my cost of customer acquisition. Reduce cost by 20% without degrading my customer NPS. It's very easy to go and say, I'm going to increase revenue by spending a lot of money on marketing, or I'm going to reduce cost by reducing some very fundamental things that really matter to customers. Defining a goal and defining the guardrail around that goal is something that the OKR process allows you to do really, really nicely. Okay, and we'll give you examples also to make it real for you. 4th, this is my second favorite superpower of the OKR process. OKRs drive cross-functional thinking and collaboration in the company. Any OKR tree that Anusha and team review, and if they find that OKRs are not calling out dependencies on other teams, but are calling out dependencies only on the internal team, they basically go back and say this OKR is not very well written. Unless the whole point of OKRs is to invoke each other and say, look, I need this from you to happen this quarter for my goal to get met. I'll give an example. When I was running EatFit as a food vertical, and I gave the growth goal to my revenue leader, saying that, look, EatFit must grow from 3 crores revenue per month to 5 crores revenue per month by the end of the quarter. Do you know what his top 5 initiatives were? Number 1, of course, the number 1 initiative was increase customer acquisition pace from 1,000 to 2,000 per day. That was his own team working on it. Second goal was add 10 more kitchens in 3 more cities. Who was responsible for adding more kitchens? The operations team. Third goal was add 5 more items to my menu so that customers have more choice and customers are able to come back and order more. Who was that goal given to? The food design team. Fourth goal, increase the average order value. Every time a customer comes and buys on the app, increase the average order value by getting him to add more items to the cart. Whose goal was that? The product team's goal, to create a recommendation engine so that when somebody's ordering food, you see a pop-up saying, this drink goes really well with this food, you may want to add this drink also. These things that Who did that goal go to? The product team. So see what's going on? One revenue goal, the top 5 initiatives have all gone to different teams. Just one belonged to his own team. Everything else went to other teams, right? That's how OKRs typically become very, very powerful. And once somebody in the other team accepts that KR, accepts that OKR, then he's accountable to deliver it. Not delivering it is not an option because it's directly linked to people's performance. So that's how the tight linkages actually happen in a company. Number 5, OKRs allow, as we were discussing some time back, OKRs are all about, as Gaurav was saying some time back, OKRs are about also reviewing them weekly, having a weekly cadence, a weekly process to make sure that you're able to identify very quickly what's working, what's not working, and what needs to be done to bring things back on track. And finally, OKRs create a massive culture of learning and improvement in a company. You know, when I first wrote my OKRs, I remember the first time they did my OKRs, my objective was green at the end of the quarter. My objective was red and all my KRs were green. Why did that happen? I had not thought deeply about what are the exact initiatives that are required to actually move the needle on the output. So the output didn't move, but all the inputs that I had said had moved. Basically indicating that either the inputs had not been estimated correctly or we had forgotten some inputs completely. And my next quarter was a much better quarter because I realized that some very fundamental things that I had not accounted for in my previous quarter, I started accounting them for in my second quarter. And my OKR tree, by the end of the second quarter, third quarter, became an absolutely kick-ass OKR tree. You know, so it allowed me to make sure that there was a very predictable engine that I was able to build in my function over a period of 2-3 quarters. So OKRs also allow tremendous learning in a company for leaders and for individuals also. Okay, so here are the big sort of 6 reasons as to why you should think about OKRs and what OKRs really help you do. And we're gonna now, I'm gonna hand over the baton to Anusha to take you guys through the nitty-gritty of the OKR process. We're gonna throw a lot of examples your way so that it becomes very clear for you to understand what OKRs really mean and how they can be powerful in your own context. Okay, Anusha, over to you.
Thanks, Neeraj. Any questions here so far on the framework or anything? Any top of mind feedback?
Can I ask, Anusha?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I was just trying to understand so you gave an example of a revenue leader where 4 out of 5 goals was actually dependent on other teams. I'm just trying to understand, I mean, like if 80% of his goals are dependent on someone else,
yes.
And when let's say that gets missed, I mean, I'm trying to understand where's the accountability here?
Yeah. So look, what happens is very simple, Sanish. So let's assume that the revenue leader has called out that to grow from 3 crores to 5 crores, that's a 2 crore increase. There is a 5 big initiative, and we also had the estimate for each initiative saying that customer acquisition increase will give me 30 lakhs or 40 lakhs, 40 lakhs. 5 new kitchens will give me another 60 lakhs. So we had the impact of every single KR identified. So if anything didn't move, we knew who to make accountable and we knew what is going to be the impact of them. So for example, it wasn't the case that all 4 didn't happen, right? So for example, if out of 5 kitchens, only 4 kitchens got opened up, then you knew that you would have a 10 lakh impact. And you held the operations team accountable for it because they were the ones who had signed up and said that, yes, I will open up 5 kitchens for you by so-and-so date, right? So the accountability flows very naturally because every KR has an owner assigned to it. And you can see which KR is moving, which KR is not moving, and the KRs that are not moving. So an L0 goal of revenue became an L1 goal of, let's say, opening up kitchens, but that L1 goal for that person in his context was an L0 goal for him, right? So if that didn't move enough, then he was held accountable for it. Obviously, the revenue leader, being the party overall accountable for revenue, had to figure out other ways to be able to recover revenue during the course of the quarter if things didn't work out on 1 or 2 KRs. That accountability he could never sort of shirk off. But this just made it much more methodical to say who has to do what for this number to actually get accomplished.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, go on. Anybody else? Any questions at this stage? Okay, let's move on, Anusha.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been speaking OKRs, right? Like, let's look at a real example and understand how this actually works, right? And how the entire cross-functional dependency comes through, how the accountability gets assigned and so on, right? So let's take a look at a real example. So I have an objective, right? This particular company wants to increase their throughput from X to Y units per hour by improving production efficiency while maintaining costs under rupees ZZ per unit, right? And this is overall, the responsibility lies with the plant head, for example. So this is the entire objective, to increase the output from the plant, manufacturing plant. So, so what you see here are 3 key results against them, right? So this is the ones that you see in bold are the ones that are the critical key results. And what you would see under each of these key results are the initiatives that would be driven to actually drive those key results and hence go ahead and impact that particular objective, right? So the first key result here is, one of the things that we always look at is how can we improve employee productivity, right? Whoever is on the shop floor, right? As measured by units per labor hour increasing from X to Y. And this gets assigned to the head of operations. So under the plant head, if you see, there is a lot of cross-functional asks that are coming in, right? First would be held by the head of operations. Now, if you look at the second key result, which is this, right? I will say that I also want to improve my capacity utilization as measured by equipment downtime reducing from X minutes to Y minutes per day, right? This could be one of the critical areas that you would want to work on with respect to increasing or improving capacity utilization for this particular quarter, let's assume, right? And this would go to the head of maintenance. The third key result would be to reduce rejections in packaging as measured by errors in label pasting decreasing from X to Y per day. And this goes to the head of quality assurance. So these are some examples, right? You may have other initiatives or other key results also that you would be calling out, but this is just an illustration for you to understand how a particular objective can percolate down into the organization and how different teams could contribute to this particular initiative, right? Apart from that, of course, the plant head himself or herself would be owning a few key results that he or she would have to also carry out, like probably hiring someone within the team, right? That could be one of the initiatives that the plant head himself would be owning. So if you look at all these key results, once you break that, the other thing is that to ensure that once you have these key results listed here, right? This is one key result, this is one key result, one key result. These 3 should directly contribute and add up to what the objective is, right? So there has to be a MECE view as well when you write key results. Now for each of this, how do we do it, right? How do we actually improve employee productivity? How do we actually improve or increase the units per labor hour? So one such initiative could be to implement pre-assembly, right? So that we can actually reduce the total product assembly time from X to Y minutes. And this could go to the new product introduction engineer within the factory, right? So this is one easy way to actually go ahead and improve the throughput from a labor hour standpoint. Now, coming to the capacity utilization, how do I go ahead and reduce my equipment downtime, right? On a per day basis, I have so many minutes of downtime because of some equipment failure. So I'll take an initiative to say, I'll bring down critical equipment failure instances from X to Y via daily preventive maintenance, and this would get assigned to the lead technician. Similarly, we will say to reduce rejections in packaging, which is causing a lot of bottleneck, which is impacting the upstream processes. I am going to automate that entire label pasting. Today, it could be done by a manual, by a person, and there are a lot of errors that are happening. Now I want to automate that by introducing a label applicator, which will bring down the errors to near zero, right? And this could be given as a project to the process engineer, right? So these are different ways in which a particular key result can be. So you see the objective, this is a key result, and this is an initiative, right? So all of these need to actually contribute to that particular objective, and that's how you would create the key results. Now, if one of them fails, this is going to get impacted, right? So all of these need to be understood really well in terms of what are the 4-5 key results that I want to drive to actually support this particular objective to be moved, right? Any questions here on the OKR framework? This is the objective, this is a key result, and this is an initiative to improve the key result.
We call it objectives, we call it key results, we call it, some people call it objectives, key results, and initiatives. We like to call them objectives and sub-objectives. Every sub-objective is an objective for that person at that level. His world starts from there, in pursuit of that tree. So the important thing to remember here is the more you're able to drill down a tree and get down to the last level tasks that will actually move the big needle, the big wheel, that's the level of the tree that you must get down to. If you're able to do that, frankly, you will be amazed at the number of times you're hitting the ball or the park in terms of hitting your goals, right? The trick is, of course, to take the objective and to be able to break it down into this level of granularity that allows you a lot of visibility into saying, how will this objective actually play out? What are the top 2-3 things that need to happen? And within them, what are the top initiatives that need to happen? Yeah. Any questions?
And of course, it doesn't mean that you need to have only one initiative identified. At every level, there can be, like, for every objective, 4 to 5 critical topmost key results that need to be called out. Within each of the key results, what are the 4 to 5 topmost initiatives that we need to drive to actually impact this, right? Here, it's just an illustration with some examples to show how the cross functionality can come through and what kind of breakdown you would have to do for each of it. Any questions here?
I think, Anusha, you would go over. So one of the problems that we faced was in terms of while setting this, the whole moonshot versus roof shots kind of a thing. Is this something that you're going to cover later, or
we will cover that.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move on, Anusha.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's look at, what goes into writing good OKRs, right? We've seen an example now. We've spoken about, how OKRs can magically transform an organization. But how do you actually write good OKRs? And it's not rocket science, right? It's just a simple checklist that we need to follow when we think about how to craft good objectives and how to craft good key results, right? So the objectives are the what's, right? These are the goals that as an organization we are all chasing. And how do you write the objective? You have to define it in a measurable manner. It should not be vague, right? We should know exactly what is the success metric that I'm going after, and where is it today in terms of what is the baseline today and what is the target that I need to attain, right? So that's how it needs to be crafted. And then also add the quality metrics or control metrics or guardrails wherever it is necessary to be called out. So in the previous example, if you recall, you can do all of that by ensuring or while maintaining the manufacturing costs are under a certain level per unit, right? So that becomes the guardrail. So you have your the output per hour has to increase from X to Y. That is where the measurability comes in, and that's the start and the target metric, and the cost becomes your check metric in the previous example. So that's how you create an objective, and these are all moonshot in nature, right? Objectives by default are always aspirational in nature. Coming to key results, these are the hows, right? How am I going to achieve this particular objective? These are the set of initiatives that need to be identified, or the sub-objectives that need to be identified to reach that particular overall company objective that we would have taken, right? And how do you go about crafting good key results? Again, this needs to be very clearly defined, right? These need to call out what am I going to do and how is this going to impact the objective, and by when will I plan, when am I planning to complete this particular key result, right? So it needs to have, it's a clearly defined how with an impact orientation and within a certain time frame. And typically the syntax, a good practice to follow when you write key results is calling out do X to achieve Y by Z, right? So if you see if you saw one of the previous examples here, I'll just go back to the previous one. So you see this automate label application, right? This is do X, right? To bring down errors to near zero. This is where we are saying to achieve Y, right? Error has to come down to zero. Similarly, if you see all the key results written down, they follow that particular syntax. So why am I doing this, right? What am I going to do and why am I going to do this? And how is this going to impact the objective is something that needs to be thought of very clearly when you're defining key results. It needs to be necessary and sufficient to achieve the objective, and including all the cross-functional dependencies. So when you think about key results, make sure that all of these key results are actually contributing to the objective, right? Are these absolutely necessary to be done? Every time you write a key result, think about it saying, if this key result is not done, am I still going to achieve my objective? Yes or no? If yes, then take it off. If no, then please keep it, right? And is it sufficient? So most of the times, right, traditionally, we've all been thinking very siloed, right? Saying that my team, what will my team do? What will I do? But more often than not, when you think of any objective or a key result at a very high level, there is no way that one team or one person can actually create that necessary impact for the company. It's always a cross dependency, right? There are a lot of cross-functional stakeholders that need to come and deliver something for you so that you are able to achieve that objective. So if you think about writing key results, also make sure that the sufficiency aspect is there. What I need to do, what my team needs to do, and what other teams need to do for me to attain this particular key result, and call them out very clearly, right? Then single owner is assigned. So at every, like OKRs dictate that we need to have single owner who's accountable to deliver that outcome for the company. There is no concept of multi-owners, co-ownership for any objective or a key result. There is only one person who is supposed to drive all the initiatives below his or her tree, right? The last aspect is around marking something as a commitment OKR. Is it an aspirational OKR or is it a solutioning OKR? Now I'll explain all these three terminologies. One is commitment, right? Commitment is anything that you know, right? You know the drivers, you know the exact levers that need to be pressed for you to actually attain that particular objective. So whichever ones you are sure of, right? Or you have committed to the board, or is business as usual for you, if those are already identified and you know exactly how to go about executing that particular key result, mark them as commitment, right? Where 100% or above is the expectation in terms of attainment of that goal. Aspirational, again, wherever you are taking stretch targets, right? Wherever you know only probably 70% or 80% of the solution to that particular problem statement, tag them as aspirational, because you would be doing some kind of experimentation in between, or figuring out what are the other levers that I can actually identify during the course of the quarter to try and reach 100% of that objective. But you're not entirely sure. When you took on the target, you're not sure that whether I'll be able to hit this particular number or not. That's where you'll have to take aspirational OKRs. Coming to solutioning are more experimental goals, or things that you're working on which may or may not impact the particular objective necessarily in this particular quarter itself, right? It can impact, it could be a lever that you're looking to identify which can help you in the subsequent quarters, or will move a particular company metric not in this quarter but in the next quarter, right? So for example, if you're looking at there is a particular issue, probably in your production lines, for example, or in your if it's a logistics company, there could be any problem statement, right? And you want to see, okay, how do I improve my manufacturing efficiency now, or production efficiency? You may have business excellence teams or process excellence teams within your organization. The entire, the whole work that they continue or keep doing on a day in and day out basis is solutioning for these problem statements, right? How do I reduce errors in my packaging station with respect to labels, right? So this could be a problem statement that somebody is working on, and you don't know, right, that you may not be able to implement that solution in this particular quarter, but definitely is something that you need to work on now so that your next quarter is secure, right? So in these cases, you would take solutioning OKR. So typically all business excellence projects come under solutioning OKRs, or you have when it comes to marketing goals, if you want to identify what will help me bring on a lot more visitors onto my webpage, and you start experimenting with different channels, etc., those could also be solutioning OKRs, right? Any questions on objectives?
I want to underline the last point that Anusha made, which is around commitment, aspiration, solution. It's a really important point. Firstly, look, several of you asked us about the concept of moonshot OKRs, with the long-term OKRs, where do they fit in? Anything which is a moonshot OKR, where the path is not known, it's a far stretch at the moment in terms of whether you can get there or not get there. Those are typically called solutioning sort of OKRs. You say, you know what, over the next 1 year, we want to launch one more product that will get us to 10% revenue. What the product is going to be, we have no idea. Which geography it will operate in, we have no idea. But we want to definitely put our efforts behind identification and development of one product that will get us at least 10% revenue of the overall pie over the course of the next 12, 18 months. That's typically what is called a solutioning objective. Something which is a moonshot at the moment, where success is not guaranteed because there is a lot to discover that you're not sure of right now, right? Commitment, of course, is, as Anisha also mentioned, where 100% attainment is very, very critical. There is no reason for you to not hit the goal 100%. And aspirational is where a few more levers still need to be identified, and you still want people to stretch themselves. You're growing 15% quarter on quarter, but mujhe pata hai, I know I can go to 25% quarter on quarter. We still haven't explored all marketing avenues very effectively. So I'm going to give my team the goal of 25%. But even if they do 15%, which is 70% of the goal, it's fine. But if they're able to go to 25%, that's phenomenal work, because then we've discovered some new levers that we've not thought about earlier, right? So aspirational is, commitment, aspirational solution is also how you set goals and how you manage people's performance linkage to OKRs, because not all OKRs are the same. Somebody who's doing a 0 to 1 project cannot be judged the same way as somebody who's doing a BAU project, or somebody who's taking on a target for an aspirational sort of number, right? So these tags help you say that if it was in a commitment OKR, then you should have hit the number 100%. 100% is meets expectation. If it was aspirational, even 70% is meets expectation, but 80-90% is outstanding work. If it was solutioning, even 10-20% is fine, doesn't really matter as long as the inputs were right, because we know this was a 0 to 1 area. Solutioning OKRs are meant to make sure that the innovation engine in the company does not get throttled. If I'm going to be taking a solutioning OKR where there are a lot of unknowns, and if you tell me that success or failure in this will determine my performance appraisal, then I will never take it up. I will say, boss, please leave it aside. I will go to an area which is very well understood so that there is no chance of failure. Right? So when you have these tags, then you don't penalize people for solutioning OKRs. As long as the inputs were in place, output nahi bhi hua to theek hai, because there were so many unknowns, right? Does that give you guys an idea about how you marry your moonshot objectives alongside your BAU goals also? Yes, Rishit.
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned or at the end. So do you give weightages to commitment, aspirational and solutioning, particularly when your OKRs are linked to the performance link incentives?
You don't need to give weightages, Rishit, but what you need to say is that, look, for a commitment OKR, 100% attainment meets expectation. For an aspirational OKR, depending on how much of a stretch was put on the target, 60-70% is meets expectation. Solutioning mein, frankly, agar inputs hue hain, output nahi bhi hua, it's completely all right. Don't put. I'm not a very big fan of putting weightages to different goals that people take, because frankly, the reason you've given him 5 goals is because you want him to do 5 goals, right? All you have to say is what defines success for every goal. Is it 100%, 70%, or even 0%? That's the purpose of these tags.
Thanks. I definitely have a take back on that one. And I have a clarification question, not this necessary and sufficient to achieve objectives. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, look, I want to grow from a revenue of 3 crore to 5 crore. The 5 initiatives that I've laid out, which is increase customer acquisition, increase number of new customers being acquired, launch more kitchens, add 5 more dishes, all these 4-5 things that I'm calling out, you must make sure that the impact of each of these initiatives is actually adding up to 2 crores. If 3 has to become 5, these top 5 initiatives that you've called out must together add up to 2 crores, right? If they only add up to 1 crore, then you've got a problem on your hands. That is what Anusha was calling out, that they must be necessary and sufficient in terms of the impact that they're creating to meet that delta that you're looking for from your OKR. All right?
Neeraj, I have a question here. Won't the solutioning OKRs get a very low priority in people's mind, right? And will be mostly left out. So the kind of innovation engine that you were saying it will fire up, actually it might never end up getting fired.
No. Abhishek, I can tell you from experience now that firstly, look, Abhishek, the culture of the company and what gets important, what doesn't get importance, what gets how much importance, I think all of that depends on the communication by the founders of the company. If you say that the top 4-5 things for the company this year are 1, improve our revenue, 2, reduce our cost, 3, improve experience, 4, do this, and by the way, number 5, also try and launch a new category, that positioning itself sounds weak. If you on the other hand see as a founder, there are 5 big things that we're going after. 1, you want to make sure that over the next 3 years, we develop more and more moats for the company. So first goal, we want to launch at least 1 more category this year, getting us to 10% of our revenue, right? And it's how much important that you as a founder lay on that objective that really matters to people more than anything else. I remember in Flipkart, the best people in the company always were handpicked to run the 0 to 1 program. When we were launching Marketplace, Ankit Nagori, who was one of the top leaders in the company in terms of running the fashion category, was chosen to run the Marketplace experiment. So I think the way you staff these projects, who you choose to put on these projects, and how you sort of reward them also goes a long way in determining the culture that you build in the company, Abhishek. So I think a lot will depend on how you position them and what sort of people you put against these big goals.
Sure, thanks.
Like, do you feel like, I mean, 0 to 1, I mean, when somebody is doing 0 to 1 projects, he should just be doing solutioning OKRs and not necessarily any commitment and aspirational OKRs?
Typically, look, what happens in a 0 to 1, 0 to 1 project, Shailesh, is the first couple of quarters are typically only solutioning work. Quarter 2, quarter 3 then start to become some amount of execution work, because 0 to 1 also means that once you develop the solution, you have to go out there and do some POCs and do some pilots, right? The quarter 2, quarter 3 is when you start doing some amount of execution work, and quarter 4 is when you establish results and say, is this working, is this not working? Should you continue to invest or should you back off now, right? So even in a solutioning OKR, the first 2-3 quarters are all, the nature of the KR start changing from becoming very heavily solution oriented to start to become a little more aspirational and commitment. Okay. By the way, even in a commitment OKR, sir, I remember we had taken this commitment goal in this company, in Curefit, reduce our cost by X% over the course of 1 year. The first quarter, one of the KRs was a solutioning KR. That look, I have a path to 50% of the goal. The balance 50% of the goal I have no path to right now. The first quarter was one of the KR was a solutioning KR to say, identify the path to the balance 50%. Where is that going to come from? And then quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, we started taking what is called aspiration and commitment OKR to be able to deliver those to the initiatives that we identified. Okay. Let's move on, Anusha. I'm slightly behind time.
Yeah, Pankaj, you had a question on this slide?
Thank you. No questions.
Okay. Sure. Okay. So a pop quiz for all of you. Let's test your OKR knowledge now in terms of identifying whether this is a well-written OKR, right? So there is this objective that most of us would relate to, right? Given the pandemic and working from home and so on, get fit by reducing weight, right? This is the objective, and we have 4 key results, right? 1 is saying exercise every day. 2nd is saying play team sports often. 3rd is eat better. 4th is maintain positive energy in living space. Can each of you opine on whether this is a good objective and key result tree? And if yes, why yes? If no, why no?
And by the way, we're gonna go randomly. We're gonna choose people, especially whose cameras are off, and we're gonna ask you questions now to give your opinion. So either you get your cameras on very quickly, or be ready for questions coming your way. Okay, why don't we go to Vikram Thakur? Vikram, why don't you take a look at this? Why don't you take a look at this OKR and tell us whether this is good, not good? What is your opinion? Vikram? Okay. Ruchika, there's an indication for you. Okay, Jatin? Jatin? Okay, let's go to you, Abhijit.
Hi, Neeraj.
Yeah. Yes. Abhijit, yes.
Yeah. So I think the KR1 is still okay, but I would modify saying that exercise every day for 30 minutes or something like that.
So basically saying make it more measurable.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
I feel even the objective is not so okay, because how much of reduction in weight is not specified.
Yes. Well done. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Neeraj, I think no other departments mentioned, right? So as a man, I would like to say put it on my wife to say you feed me properly, or get me better diet or something like that, right?
That's a dependency.
Well said, my friend. Absolutely. Look,
you're turning the OKR to somebody else.
Very important to call out what you expect from the other stakeholders also. You're not going to reduce weight if your wife's going to keep giving you really, really tasty food every day, right? And lots of it. So, what do you expect from the stakeholders around you to be done for these goals to get an absolutely spot on? Yes, anybody else, guys?
The time frame needs to be defined.
Yeah, well done. Yes, the time frame needs to be defined. Okay, yes.
The eat better KR3, it needs to be like what more protein or carb or what you have.
Absolutely, very vague. What you're basically saying is it's too vague, doesn't say too much at all about eat better. Matlab what?
Exactly.
Even
I can
progress is not measurable.
Yeah, I can do pranayam for 10 minutes and say, I'm exercising every day. Is that going to help you reduce weight? The chances are no, right?
No, I think your KR4 could be a little bit subjective. The maintain positive energy. I mean, that could be a subjective piece, but everything else has to be measurable.
Even KR4.
I mean, it could be. It's just that this is more of a environmental.
Necessary.
So that is still okay. But all of the others, they would have to have. We would have to have some measures in place for each of them, right? From the objective, going into KR1, KR2, and KR3. We'll have to make it tangible.
I completely agree with you. My only push, Kinjal, to you would be try and make everything that you are taking on as a critical initiative, try and make everything as measurable as you can. Otherwise it becomes really hard to say whether you succeeded, not succeeded. So whatever you take as cares, try and take measurable care only. Okay.
I'm very intrigued by it says exercise every day, but play team sports. Why would it have that?
Why will it have? Well, look, again, we're not weight experts here, Rishit, so we're not going to go into what are the thinking behind these 4 KRs, but the idea is more about structuring of the KR. So you're right.
Is it a necessary condition? And doesn't seem like team sports is a necessary condition.
Yeah. So it entirely depends on what is the time available, etc. Right? So this could be some this is a person who does not know OKRs and has just gone ahead and taken something. And again, I would still push you to think about does get fit really mean just weight reduction? Is that the right metric to go after? That is the other question to be asked. And the fourth part is whether it's necessary, right? The fourth key result that you see here, is it really necessary to attain that particular objective? So we have to look at all these conditions as well. So I think most of you have covered, the measurability aspect, the time frame aspect, the dependency, who needs to own what, right? All of that, which is good. So let's take a look at, does anybody else have any other opinions or anything, any feedback?
Just pressing on what Kinjal was saying, I mean, is it necessary? I mean, could you have a KR without measurement? Is that okay, or that's completely not okay?
Well, our belief system is that, if it's a critical KR, please try and make it as measurable as you can. Even if that KR is not measurable, at least the sub KRs below it have to be really measurable, right? Sometimes a KR, for example, improve employee sentiment. Right? Improve employee sentiment has got, there's no one way to improve employee sentiment. There are 4 or 5 things that need to be done. For example, make sure that I roll out the new leave policy, make sure that I roll out the new ESOP policy. But by and large, please make sure that most of the KRs are as measurable as they can be. Very, very important. Otherwise, it's very, very hazy and you can never basically say succeed work in anymore. Right? By the way, one more thing before we move on to telling you a better example of the same articulation of this OKR is, when you first start doing your OKRs, most of us and most of our team members will end up writing OKRs which look like this. That's how poor we are in how thinking. That's how poor we are in this way of working. Remember, it's a journey. The first time you do it, you will invariably end up making your OKR tree look something like this. But it's important to be aware of the pitfalls and obviously consciously work on improving the way you write your OKRs. Anusha, back to you.
Sure. So let's look at a better version. Right. So the objective has been reframed now to say, making it a little more aspirational, right? To say that I want to start looking and feeling like a teenager by reducing body fat from 32% to 25%. Now I'm defining what fit means for me, right? I need to start looking as somebody younger than my age, and I want to start reducing my body fat from 32% to 25%. While maintaining levels of other health metrics, right? So there is a guardrail that is being put in here saying I won't go about doing anything crazy to bring my body fat down, but I also have to make sure that I'm really being fit by making sure my health metrics are stable, right? So the key result 1, which was earlier called exercise every day, has been made more sharp now by saying that I want to burn 1000 calories through exercise every day. And I am the owner for this, right? This is a personal, individual person's key result. So you would say that I am responsible for ultimately doing this on an everyday basis. The second key result, which was earlier called eat better, has become follow a certain diet, right? Keto diet in this case, with a carb intake less than 30 grams per day, right? And this is also my responsibility overall. The key result 3, right, which is which you now notice is the check metric or the guardrail. There is a key result that is going against the guardrail also, right? Where we are saying that I will maintain my key health indicators and what would I do for each of this, right? So if you look at key result 1, burning 1000 calories through exercise every day has a how list, right? What are the initiatives or what are the activities that I will do to actually get to this particular number, right? So I will engage in a high intensity cardio session for at least 30 minutes every day. I'll walk 10,000 steps every day. I will play a team sport for 1 hour once a week, right? This is probably the way the metabolism works for the person, etc. And that's how this person will be able to burn 1000 calories. Then similarly, how will I ensure through diet, I am able to actually get to this particular initiative, right? What will I do for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Similarly, for maintaining my key health indicator, now this is a solutioning key result, right? This is not something that, we have to baseline ourselves to say, first, I will go for a master health checkup and see where am I in terms of all my health indicators. And then I will see if there is something up or down. How do I bring that back on track by consuming certain supplements so that I can overall go ahead and achieve my KR1 and KR2 and ultimately achieve my objective. Now, if you think of this, right, not necessary that, by doing each of this, you will be actually able to burn 1000 calories or, control each of these elements, right? So that's where course correction comes in, unless you keep tracking each of this on a regular basis. And that's the point that Neeraj made earlier, that if you have weekly reviews, right, weekly you're tracking or daily you're tracking your metrics, you will come to know where things are going off track and what should I do to course correct and bring this back on track, right? So by doing all of this, all these inputs are necessary to be done. You keep doing this, assuming that it will deliver results for you. But if they don't deliver results, you can quickly make those necessary course corrections by, changing some things around, right? Or having a conversation with your nutritionist or coach or somebody, right? And then continue being on track to attain this particular metric, the objective that you have for yourself. Any questions here?
There's one more thing, one more small thing that I want to add. We've shown you here. You notice the first 4-5 words, look and feel like a teenager. I saw many of you smiling when you saw that written in that manner. But we didn't put that in to create a dash of humor in the OKR articulation, right? Remember, your OKRs are a phenomenal opportunity for you to communicate the vision of the company to your team members. Telling people that increase revenue from 3 crore to 5 crore is as boring as it can get. Very tactical, very transactional. Telling people become India's top 3 cloud kitchen brand by getting to a revenue by increasing revenue from 3 crore to 5 crore. Now that's aspirational. It suddenly wakes people up and says, you know what? Wow, we have an opportunity to becoming a top 3 cloud kitchen brand in the company, and that's why we're doing this. So look, OKRs are a wonderful opportunity for the founders to communicate to the entire company, not the what only, but the whys of the whats. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is revenue important? Because we have the ambition to become a top 3 player in this segment. Why are we reducing costs? Because we want to become one of India's only sustainable players in this segment on the back of cost reduction coming on the back of us becoming profitable for customers. Right? So always frame your OKRs in a manner which inspires people beyond just a tactical metric improvement that otherwise most people end up doing. Okay. Go on, Anusha. Any questions? Any sort of questions on this slide? Otherwise, guys, does it make it clear in terms of what the OKR application look like? What it can accomplish for you? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on, Anusha.
Sure. So based on our collective experience, right, doing this at Flipkart, Ola, CureFit, X210X itself, and working with several other organizations in the startup ecosystem and large enterprises, we've come up with this 10-step guide, right? It's a practitioner's guide to rolling out OKRs and doing that successfully, right? And there are a few critical elements that we need to be very careful about before we embark on the journey of OKRs. And that's what we will cover. And how do you continue on a sustained quarter-on-quarter basis to drive the entire OKR process, right? So the first aspect before we begin the OKR process itself, like, you had mentioned earlier that, how do you balance long-term and short-term goals? One critical aspect is to understand what the company wants to do in terms of the strategy, right? What is it that we as a company should be doing in the next 1 year, right? What is my next 12-month goals, right? What are the key metrics that I need to hit, and what are the key initiatives I need to work on, etc., right? Have that understanding in place. That is very important. And once that is laid out, see whether you have the right kind of organization structure, right? This is very important, because without having the right leaders or the right capacity built in place, there is no way that this strategic goal can be met, right? So you have to also understand that, saying, if these are the 12-month goals, do I have all the capabilities, necessary kind of skill sets within the organization which are aligned to these strategic goals, and who can take this vision forward in terms of execution, right? That needs to be understood as well, and aligned to the broader vision that you may have. The third aspect is to have metrics rigor. Here we would want to take you through an example in the subsequent slide. So there needs to be an understanding of what are the top company metrics and how are those broken down into the next level of input metrics, right? And once you have that, issue tree or driver tree in place, you will then understand that which metric needs to move in what direction for me to ultimately hit this particular L0 company metric that I may have, right? So each of those input metrics, when they move in a certain way, your company metric would move in a certain way, right? So having that understanding is very important. So based on that, it will become very easy for us to identify what OKRs we have to take, where do we have to take OKRs, and are these initiatives sufficient for us to actually move the needle on each of these input metrics, right? So the L0 metric is broken down into an L1 metric, L2 metric, L3 metric, which we will show in the subsequent slide for you to understand that better. The fourth and very important aspect, right? This is something that we always keep talking to various founders on, is that, you need to have someone who's not dedicatedly, but at least a majority part of this person's time should go in terms of driving the whole OKR process, right? A lot of founders say, why can't I do it? But that's not possible, because you have 1,000 other things to do, right? There are so many other priorities, and this is one thing which will go off track entirely, and it will derail if you're not, if you don't have someone who can own and drive this process on a day in, day out basis for you, right? So typically, a lot of companies have positions like chiefs of staff, right? You would have somebody in the strategy team, or worst case, even a functional head, right? Somebody who has a complete understanding of the business, is able to work very well with the various other leaders within the company, and can drive this particular process, right? So they can also become OKR champions. So these 4 points that you see are very important, are prerequisites for us before we actually go ahead and launch the OKR process. Any questions on the readiness aspect?
What are the responsibilities of OKR champion?
Yeah, thanks, Vinayak. So OKR champions typically are people who own the process, drive the process, and work work very closely with the founders or the CEOs to actually come up with a good list of company objectives. What are the company objectives that we need to drive? What are the key results that need to be driven for us to reach those company objectives? Starting from there, starting from goal formulation to execution, right? How do you make sure that these are all translating into what the different leaders have to be working on? Working with them very closely in terms of identifying their dependencies, what are the drivers they would have, what are the levers that they can work on, helping them come up with all these breakdowns of their respective key results, right? Once that is done, once all the OKRs are actually written really well and aligned with one another, then when you get into driving progress, which is the execution, setting up those necessary cadences within the organization, be it at a leadership level, be it at a functional level, to drive the OKR process and really help everyone adhere to the philosophy and drive adoption, right? And also, apart from just driving all the cadences, identify where things can go wrong, right? Where KRs are running off track. How do we set up problem solving sessions to actually bring them back on track? This person would also be facilitating all those sessions, right? So this is an end-to-end kind of holding the thread of the entire OKR process would be the ownership of the OKR champion.
Vinayak, the OKR process is a very heavy one, Vinayak. It requires dedicated effort, continuous effort. As Dinesh was saying, setup phase, when you're crafting all your OKRs, building your OKR tree out, the review phase, where you start doing your weekly reviews, starting your working sessions, decision sessions to debottleneck what is not working. This is a heavy process, requires dedicated effort and time from somebody in the company. If you yourself try to do it, you will never succeed because you have a lot of other things to do also. So you need somebody in the company who's able to run this and manage this process over at least a 2-quarter period. After that, of course, it becomes a way of life for the company. It becomes a very organic process. But for the first couple of quarters, you need somebody to spend 50% of his time or her time doing this process for the company.
And the person should be a senior person.
Reasonably senior, as long as the person belongs to the CEO's office, even if he has 3-4 years experience, it's completely all right. But the person should have a ringside view of the company. That's very important.
And within the whole team, how much of transparency should be there that people know each other's OKRs and the progress?
Look, the whole OKR process works when there is complete transparency.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, if I'm not able to call out dependencies in each other, then frankly, the OKR process is of no use. So OKRs work when there's a lot of transparency. Very important. Abhijit?
So I wanted to have when you do a 12-month goal session, do you have a plan A, plan B kind of thing? Suppose we're going to have a third wave or not third wave, we don't know, something like that. So So
look, typically when you set out your 12-month out goals, Abhijit, you are setting out your goals based on what you know today. And look, 12 months is a long time in the context of a fast-growing company in a country like India, especially with our macros, right? 12 months is a long time. So it's not to say that once you set a 12-month goal, they can never change. Goals will change. But basis today's reality, basis what you know today, what would you like to see over the next 12 months a company accomplish is what you need to set out your goals for. If something changes after 3 months, something very substantial changes, let's say COVID third wave happens, you go back very quickly to the drawing board and say, my goal for the next 1 year have to be adjusted very quickly downwards because 1 quarter or 2 quarters we're going to lose again, right? So, for example, revenue is not going to happen, so cost has to become very, very, very important, or rationalization of manpower becomes very important. So you go back to the drawing board very quickly, but at any point in time, basically whatever you know, you start with that frame for the next 12 months. Okay?
Great, thanks.
The annual goals is a directional document, right? It's something that is a North Star metric that we will keep moving towards, but as the quarter plays out, we will know whether that goal can be met or not. And then we go back and, like Neeraj mentioned, we will change those annual goals depending on the new reality that we know.
Rishit?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One is that what is the homework do I as an entrepreneur need to do before we launch the OKR process? Do I need to make some trade-offs, or do I want to take some discussions with the team?
Well, what is the homework that you need to do for the OKR process? I will say just one or two small things, Rishit. One, you must develop deep conviction in the OKR process. The reason I'm saying that is OKRs don't yield magical results in 1 quarter or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or 10 weeks. OKRs give you results over a 2-3 quarter time. I've seen too many times people starting with a lot of excitement about OKRs and then 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later saying, you know what, this is too tough, chhod dete hain isko. People are not liking this. So don't treat this like an experiment. Treat this like a way of life in the company. And if you want to embrace a way of life, you better be prepared for it mentally. So if you want to do some reading, you want to have more chats with people who've done OKRs, do that, develop conviction. That's very important. Your conviction is the most important ingredient for the success of the OKR process. When the company realizes that this matters to my founder, I promise you, they will all fall in line very, very quickly. Number one. Number two, of course, is just make sure that you've identified the OKR champion. Don't start the OKR process without an OKR champion. And number three, the very small tactical thing, do not try and do OKRs in Excel sheets. That's the worst possible thing that you can do for yourself and for your company. The week-on-week progress, the week-on-week check-ins, the week-on-week review. If you keep doing it in Excel sheet, you will keep overwriting, on the same cell, you will keep losing on the history of what happened week on week. And that's the worst thing that can happen to an OKR process, right? So don't do Excel sheets, please do a tool. These are the little 2-3 small things that we recommend. If you are convinced about these 2-3 things, then go ahead, go full on. OKR, by the way, we've now done this for 60-70 companies. And I think barring one or two situations where we very quickly realized that the company was not in the right position to do OKRs because there was just too much change happening in the company. We basically said, we basically pulled out very, very early on. We told the founders, come back to this 6 months later when you're more ready. But otherwise, in almost every single situation, OKR has stabilized it really well because the founders had a lot of conviction and they had OKR champions identified and put in place.
Can it be implemented in a phased way, or for everybody it should be implemented in one go?
We recommend, Vinayak, a phased approach. We recommend, for example, in the first quarter, you take the top leaders, the top 2 layers in the company on the OKR process only across all departments, and then the next quarter you invoke more and more layers in the company. But first quarter, only the top 2 layers in the company should be invoked. Below the founder, the top 2 layers. So
okay.
Typically about 25-30 people at best in the first quarter.
Actually, my question was more towards what should be the level of direction setting that a founder brings in, or should it be more democratic? Or I know it's subjective, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the goals have to come from you. Where do you want the company to be over the next 12 months? The initial draft has to come from you. Then you can get your leaders to chime in and tell you whether something is completely out of whack or something is doable, not doable. That's all right. But the initial draft, the initial goal setting has to come from you, because if you leave it completely democratic, frankly, you will not see big things happening in the company because people typically tend to take lower goals because nobody likes to see their goals not being attained. The initial goal setting must come from the top. Goal setting is always a top-down process. Yes, bottoms up to take feedback, but that's a negotiation process that happens naturally. But initial goal setting has to be done by the founder.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move to the process rigor, right? This needs to be done on a quarter-on-quarter basis. First is setup in terms of writing good OKRs, right? That is the end outcome of this particular piece. And we will go a little more deeper into each of this in the subsequent slides. So I'll just keep it very high level here. So basically you start writing your OKRs 6 weeks before your execution quarter begins, right? For example, if you are planning to launch this in October, November, December, typically sometime now is when you should ideally begin writing your OKRs. And then go ahead and based on what we learned about writing good OKRs, right? What goes into writing good objectives, key results, craft those company objectives, start cascading that, and let each of the team members call cross-functional dependencies. And then the bottom up would happen, right? In terms of where capabilities exist, where capacity exists, etc. Depending on all that understanding that is there from the ground up, they will start then accepting or declining their key results, and then you would get to know as to what your end outcome can be for that particular quarter. So this is a top-down as well as a bottom-up approach. It's not just top-down. That's about the setup phase. Then you would come into execution rigor, right? Where you would be driving progress on a week-on-week basis. You will be running leadership forums, functional forums to actually run these check-ins, where you talk about if things are on track, great. If not on track, where risks exist, where dependencies are not working out, what kind of actions are being put in place to actually bring things back on track, right? And then you also drive something called as problem-solving sessions or working sessions. Once you run the reviews, you identify there are 2-3 areas probably, right, that require dedicated attention, and you need a certain set of stakeholders, probably including yourself, to be problem solving in those areas. So you identify those and set them up based on your review, and come up with an outcome saying that this is how I'm going to proceed with respect to these goals, and these are the certain actions that I would take, and track them and monitor them really well, right? So that's about driving progress. And sometimes what happens during the quarter is, because of external reasons or internal reasons, there could be some, changes that can come to the initial OKR or the goal setting that you would have done. In those cases, we definitely recommend a process called drop to pick, right? Because during the quarter, you have only so much capacity. You have only so many people in certain teams, and they can only do so much, right? So if there is a new incoming priority that is coming in, make sure that you are dropping something which is no longer relevant to the current scenario, and then you are releasing bandwidth to pick this up, which is more important for the company, right? So make sure that you're not just piling on and adding on things, because ultimately they will be here, neither here nor there. But make sure you have the proper drop to pick process put in place so that you can manage change better. So this is around the process rigor. And like Neeraj mentioned earlier several times, right, that one is you need to commit to this process. Nobody gets OKRs right in the first quarter. It's a launch and learn quarter. First is to set up everything, write good OKRs, try putting in all these particular cadences in place to track your OKRs really well and problem solve for them, etc. So there'll be a lot of learnings that will come through in the first quarter. Based on those learnings, based on those reflections, refine your subsequent quarter and make your second quarter better. And there again, you will have learnings that are coming in. And ultimately, by third quarter, you would have a good OKR process in place, which will help you shape your capacity or manage your capacity in the direction that you would want the company to go in, right? So people will learn in first and second quarter as to how I can assign or align my resources better and better to the strategic initiatives that I would want to take or the direction that the company needs to move in. People will be able to flex or flexibly manage the capacity well. So commitment is very, very important. Nobody gets it right in the first quarter. That's the main lesson, right? So second quarter, third quarter is when more or less OKRs settle down very, very well and become a way of working for all of you. Any questions here overall? Okay, we'll move to the next slide. So
and,
this is
we can stop at this, the last slide, which is the L0 to L3 cascade, Anusha. Then you can do the self-reflection, and then we can also do the Q&A with the entire group.
Okay.
Let's go to the L0 to L3. Yeah.
So this is the L0 to L3. This is the metrics rigor that we spoke about, right? You had also asked, can you help me understand this better, right? So this is a logistics example, right? So this is how do you convert your outputs into operating inputs, right? So the L0 is the output that you need. And what are the L1s, L2s, L3s that we need to look at, which are going to impact the L0, right? So here is a supply chain example. Here, the end outcome that we want, or the metric that needs to get moved, is to reduce the supply chain cost per shipment from 125 rupees to 85 rupees. This is so the metrics that you see in bold are the critical success metrics that we are looking at. And there is a from and to metric everywhere, right? So the goal that we need to hit is to reduce the supply chain cost from 125 rupees to 85 rupees. Now, typically, so this is a Flipkart example. So typically in the supply chain for an e-commerce organization, you may have, the transportation, which is TPT, right? Then you have fulfillment centers or the warehouses. And then you have last mile, the last part of it, where you have delivery hubs, and then you have the customer linkage, right? So you have transportation, fulfillment center, and last mile. So if you see this, it's basically a target redistribution that has happened across these three departments under the supply chain team. So transportation CPS, cost per shipment, has to reduce from 35 rupees to 20 rupees. Fulfillment center has to go down by 10 rupees, right? Similarly, last mile CPS has to go down by 15 rupees and so on. It's a basic target redistribution. But what happens from here is, within transportation, we used to have two departments again, right? We used to have air transportation and we used to have surface transportation. So within this, we had we now broke that down, the L1 metric down to certain L2 metrics, where the first one was to reduce the air dependency, right? More and more, less and less shipments actually need to move away from, should go via air. That is what basically we have called out here, saying that the air dependency has to come down from 60% to 20%. And this will yield significant result in terms of cost reduction, right? So then next, moving to the surface transportation, which is more the trucks, right? So within trucks, we have two terminologies again, full truck loads and part truck loads. So what we say here is, for us to actually deliver, cost savings, we have to move away from full truck, move away from part trucks, which are more flexible capacity providing and more expensive in nature, right? So since the dependency on air is going down, then the dependency on surface will go up. And that's why we need to now move to a more full truck mode. And this needs to increase from 50% to 75%, right? And if full trucks are not utilized well, that means again you will fall back to contracting more new full trucks, or you will end up paying more for part trucks, right? So here we are saying that whatever full trucks you are contracting, please utilize them to the maximum extent, and the utilization currently is 60%, that needs to move to 80%. So only if these three metrics of air percentage coming down from 60 to 20, surface full truck loads increasing from 50 to 75, and utilization improving from 60 to 80, will I be able to get this 15 rupee reduction in my overall transportation cost per shipment, right? So this is how the metrics got further broken down. Now for this L2 metric, which is reduce air percentage from 60 to 20, for this to happen, we had to run a couple of initiatives, right? One is at Flipkart, we used to have lots of warehouses across different states, and of course, customers from various states, right? But sometimes we used to see that a lot of customers who are sitting in the south of India used to get a lot of shipments from the north of India, right? So, which means if you are actually planning to deliver shipments quickly to them, there is no way that without air, you will be able to deliver that in that kind of time, right? So now we said that we have to actually plan our inventory much better across all the warehouses that we have, so that the regional utilization. So for example, if there is a warehouse in Bangalore, the customer in Karnataka should actually get the shipment from the Bangalore warehouse and not from Delhi or Mumbai, right? So we now said that the regional utilization has to continue increasing through better and better inventory planning and inventory placement across all these warehouses, so that we can actually deliver shipments quickly via surface transport itself without depending on air. The second initiative that we had to drive was across certain categories, like diapers or low cost apparels, or low cost household items. People were more cost sensitive than speed sensitive, right? So they said, as long as you are able to give me a good deal across sorry. Basically, if in these cases, right, when you are, you can actually extend your promise to say, I am not going to deliver my shipments in 3 days, rather I would do that in 4 days or 5 days across all these categories, then, there is not going to be much of an impact in terms of the cost again, right? So the category alignment was done for certain such items, and which had a certain SLA impact as well, right? So if you look at this is an L0 to L3 kind of a metric breakdown that has happened, and the initiatives that need to run, and the certain metrics like the RUs, SLA impact, all of this that we are tracking really well at a metric level, which is ultimately going to deliver this particular L0. So in all the review meetings that we used to have, we always used to look at all these inputs, right? Not look at this first, but whether the regional utilization is increasing. Have we adjusted our SLAs across all of these categories? So ultimately, is this actually helping us, bring down the air dependency? Is my surface full truck utilization increasing, right? Am I contracting more and more full trucks? All of these are the inputs that need to get tracked, based on which we will be able to actually understand whether the L1 is getting delivered, the L0 is getting delivered. So input view is very important. And then based on that, you can actually take good OKRs, right? How do I reduce transportation? These would be the 3 OKRs. Under each of this, what are the different initiatives that I need to run? That can be identified really well. And that's how the metric understanding or the issue tree breakdown to OKRs get aligned.
If you think about this, this is really a different representation of the same OKR. If the OKR started off by saying reduce cost, this is really a different representation of the OKR tree cascading downwards to different teams and different people at different levels. By the way, when an OKR tree cascades from L0 to L3, the person owning the L3 initiative need not necessarily be an L3 person in the company. The L3 OKR could be owned by an L0 or an L1 leader in the company also. In this case, regional utilization, which was an inventory planning task, was owned by the inventory planning leader, who was an L1 leader in the company. So the OKR tree does not necessarily replicate the hierarchical tree in the company in terms of reporting structures. And that's again a super part of the OKR process. We're going to stop here. Hopefully, we've given you a lot of information about what OKRs are, how OKRs can help you, what OKRs can do for you in your contexts. how should you think about OKRs in terms of balancing them out between here and now versus the long-term aspirational moonshots you're going after? What are some do's? What are some don'ts? What we'll do now is do a very quick self-reflection exercise. We'll ask you like we did last time. We're going to ask you a few questions, answer them, and then we'll reconvene as a group to see what areas we're doing well in the group today in terms of running our companies well inside versus what areas we're not doing at all. And then, of course, we will open up the group for a Q&A session also after the self-assessment exercise. So please, the link has been shared in the chat window. Please please open up the link and ask any questions. If you want any clarifications, feel free, but please fill it up. Won't take you more than a couple of minutes. Sonali, who's keeping a track of the responses coming in?
I am Neeraj. I'll share my screen. So far, one response.
Yeah, let's wait. So let's wait for at least about 15 responses coming in, and then we can discuss the results.
We have 6 responses.
Neeraj, which tool would you recommend for doing OKRs? You said not to use Excel sheets.
Rishabh, there are many tools out there, frankly. Look, there are, if you go and look out for OKR tools, there must be 20, 25 OKR tools that, out there by different companies. We also have our own OKR tool called 10x Goals. And we've designed it keeping our own learnings in mind of really making it simple for people so that there is very little overhead of using a tool. But there are many tools out there, so you should feel free to look at all these tools, but also look at 10x Goals. It's designed keeping simplicity in mind and designed to make sure that it is as intuitive as it can be for people across different levels in the company. But there is no dearth of OKR tools out there today, Rishabh.
We have 15 responses, Neeraj. I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah.
60.
Okay, thanks. So overall score 2.6 on 6. Can you come down, please? It's for the individual questions. Yeah. Do we have employee goals aligned to company goals? Not bad. 4.7 is not bad. Typically, we've seen very poor scores on this one in companies where people say that yes, the leadership goals are very well aligned, but for the rest of the company, frankly, the goals may or may not be aligned with the company goals. So not bad for this group. Clear what and how breakdown. That's clearly, most of us are in red and yellow. 2.8. That's clearly an area for improvement. And that's really what OKRs force you to do. Ownership and accountability. Again, some of you have called out, many of you have called out red. Some of you have called out amber as well. So reasonably okay, but not great. 4.1. Regular check-ins. 4.7, which is also decent. Predictability. We're able to measure. We're able to hit our goals predictably, which is also quite nice. 5. Typically, we find much poorer scores on this one. Largely because there is so much output focus, not enough input focus. So predictability, in fact, is a big challenge that people call out. And employee performance linked to goals, again, 4.4. So not not too bad at all. Can you go back up? Can you refresh again, please, Rani? And remind me, Anusha, these are on a scale of 10?
Yeah, scale of 10.
Yes, Neeraj. So hence every score is red because it's below 5. Initially, when there were some few responses, some of these were green or yellow, but now with the group's response, they've turned red.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a. Can you come down, please? Yeah. So I think overall, a lot of work to be done, and that is really, and that is not surprising. A lot of us have been there. A lot of us who've managed teams, growing companies, growing teams have all been here. This is one of the most critical things to get right, especially when you're scaling very fast. You want to scale very fast. What you can't afford in a very rapid scaling environment is to keep missing your goals or to not have predictability about your goals. And OKR is the one framework that I can promise you can become like a superpower in terms of firstly giving you visibility as founders and leaders in terms of what really is happening, in various parts of the organization, which parts are doing well. By the way, one more thing I can tell you is when you look at the OKR tree in your company, just a glance at the OKR tree in terms of looking at your L1, L2s for various L0 objectives will tell you how much of depth your leaders actually have. It's amazing. Your leaders with the maximum depth of understanding of their area, they'll have the most beautifully crafted initiative list and sub-initiative list, and leaders who have very little clue about the inputs that are actually required will have the poorest OKR trees. So you can actually, using the OKR tree, also very quickly assess how much of water your individual leaders are in terms of their own understanding, how much of them are depending on this, this Josh to hit their goals versus how much of them have got a method to be able to hit the goals very predictably. That's again something that comes out very, very nicely through the OKR process. So yeah, again, like I said, not very surprising results. Most companies are in the same place, but I think it kind of calls out very loudly the need for a process like this to be able to run your company well from inside. This is what is called the software inside a company. How do you run the company really smoothly from inside? This is any reflections, by the way? Let's just go around the table. Anybody wants to reflect on these questions in your own reflection of where you are as a company on these areas? Anybody wants to go, especially the ones that have been marked as red and yellow? Any specific areas in your own company that definitely need improvement? Yes, Rishit?
I definitely found there's a huge gap between the what and the how. And I think that, to your point, which you made earlier, is reflective of the depth of leadership. So that's quite clear to me.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think in our company, the chief OKR officer was missing, I think, or is missing. That is the reason we keep going on track and off track. I think that is one good thing that is one.
Like any strong process, Abhijit, it's very important to first have somebody own the process. Just as you would own any critical metric in the company, successful OKR implementation is also a metric in the company. You must have somebody owning that metric. It can't be the founder himself because he's got too much on his plate. Has to be somebody in the team who you can make accountable for running this process. Without that, it's going to be very hard. Naveen?
Yeah. Our company is a very sales-centric company. So wherein the regular check-ins do not happen because either you have the performers or you have the non-performers. The performers feel that they did not check in because the numbers show it. And the non-performers always shy away from the meetings, so or they're there physically present, but they're not participating. So that's where I think the big, because we set the numbers and goals as key objectives, and and sales is very simple, so that way. I think that's where we're missing a lot. So people are there physically present, but they're not participating in the meeting. So they're quiet most of the time. So
again, Naveen, the tone for how these meetings need to be run needs to be set from the very top. In terms of asking pointed questions, not letting people stay quiet, pushing people to be more responsive. I think the tone has to be set from the very top. If you set the tone, frankly, it's very hard for people to not come prepared and not be able or not sort of come, and respond to questions in the meeting. It's very important for you to set the tone in the right manner.
Right.
Vikram?
So finding a chief OKR officer, like you're suggesting, OKR champion, who has not been with the company, getting someone talented and to align with the thinking and the thought process of the company will take at least a year, because the people in the company are already have their own, I mean, they already have their own opinions of how things should be done. So would you recommend getting someone from outside, or do you recommend taking someone from inside and kind of training them with your thought process?
Well, look, if the conviction is very strong, Vikram, that we want to run the OKR process and we want to run it, sooner rather than later, then if you go out and hire somebody for the process, it might take you 6 months, 3 months to find the right person for him to come in and settle down another, let's say, couple of months. You're looking at a 4-5 month window, at least a 3-4 month window, right? Yes, there are companies who've done that also, who felt that, I want to start this 1 quarter out. I want to start this process by, 4 months later. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to go out and hire the right OKR champion. We know people who've done that really effectively. But there are also people who say, I don't need to hire from outside. I have somebody inside my company who I can give this mantle to. If for the next 2 quarters, I want to make sure that this process settles down well, and I've got somebody in the company who can make it happen for me, as long as I reduce the overall load on this guy by taking away some of his current responsibilities. People have done that too. The only important thing that matters, Vikram, is if you're selecting somebody from within the company, does that person have the persona of an OKR champion? Is that person somebody who has a ringside view of the company? Is that a lot of people ask us, should we make the HR head the OKR champion? And we say, please don't. Don't do that, because the HR people very rarely have business understanding, right? And you need somebody who's got business understanding here, to be able to work with different leaders and say, you know what, this is not broken down properly, or you've not called it all the initiatives properly. The HR leader who doesn't have business understanding is not the right person for that, right? So as long as you select the right person, Vikram, it can be internal, can be external. That frankly depends on whether you have somebody internally or not. External should be looked at only when you're sure under koi nahi, right? Then you should look at externally. But don't start the process till the right person is put in place. That's the limited sort of recommendation.
Sorry, but one more question. If we have to hire externally, what would be the kind of the profile of a person that we're looking at?
You're looking at somebody who's a smart generalist, good pedigree, typically good MBA college, 3-4 years out of college, smart generalist, not somebody with too much of experience under the belt, but 3-4 years out of college, a good sort of pedigree, because these people are then able to have confident conversations with other leaders in the company also. They're not very intimidated by senior people. As long as the person comes with good pedigree, 3-4 years of experience is more than enough.
Great. Thanks so much.
Ankit?
So my question was, after looking at the presentation, and I'm been learning about OKR for the first time. How do you differentiate this with SMART goals? How you set SMART goals for people within your organization. How would you slightly differentiate from that? And one point of reflection was, sorry. Yes, hello?
Yeah, we were losing you. You were saying, how do you differentiate OKRs from SMART goals? What are the other questions?
Yeah, so that was the question. And then I just want to reflect on a point, so you can answer the question first.
Yeah. Look, there are many different philosophies. There are many different processes available, Ankit. There is something called SMART goals. There is something called management objectives. There is something called KPI and metric review only. There are different processes that exist in the world, right? And we are nobody to say that process A is better than process B or process B is better than process C, frankly. What we can tell you is that we found the OKR process immensely powerful in our own context, which is why we're such big evangelizers of this process. For one simple reason, there is no process that encourages cross-functional collaboration like the OKR process does. SMART goals, yes, allow you to break it down into further sub-goals. But the two things that make the OKR process stand out, have an identity of their own, is the fact that they will force you to keep peeling off the layers of the onion till you get down to the last initiative that really will make the big wheel move. And two, there is the process out there that invokes cross-functional collaboration like the OKR process does. These are the two critical problems you're trying to solve in your company. Then go for the OKR process. If you believe, nay, collaboration is not an issue in my company, people are very good in hot thinking, all I want is a good set of process to be able to review their goals, then frankly, SMART goals or MBOs, anything can work in your context.
Okay. Okay. Just another point of reflection was, I think you spoke about the commitment of the founder. I think without that, none of this is possible, because we went through one of these similar exercises the year before the pandemic. And somewhere when we lost interest, the entire team lost interest.
Yeah.
So I think just trying to reflect on that's extremely important. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, this is a top-down process. There is no other way to say it. This is nobody likes to go on a weekly review meeting and give an update on how they're doing, how they're not doing. Nobody likes to spend time thinking about the house when they can get away with some lazy thinking and saying, you know what, kuch karke goals hit kar dete hain. Why spend so much time in thinking about the house? Nobody likes doing it. It requires effort, right? So the minute the founder slacks off, I promise you, people will run faster than you can imagine in terms of not adopting the process. So, which is why I keep saying, if you have conviction, stick at it. You know, if you don't have conviction, don't start it. Please don't do it. Also, look, it's never good, right? As a founder to start something and then drop it off after 3 months or 4 months. Then people start losing, start believing that, any new thing that we try is like an experiment. 3-4 mahine tak wo fancy rehta hai, uske baad chhod dete hain, right? It's also bad for the culture of the company. So if you start something as deep as this, be sure that you're going to stick to this for the rest of your, committed life in the company. Otherwise, don't do it. Okay, Hriday?
I don't know how to phrase this question, but basically, if I can give you a situation.
Yes.
So we do both domestic and export sales, and being a manufacturer, we have capacity constraints. And right now what's happening is, because of the situation, exports market has dramatically opened up for us.
Yes.
So I'm getting way too many export orders, and that guy is meeting all his metrics and surpassing them, including, the profit margin and everything. At the same time, the domestic guy is still, he's trudging along, but now from a production perspective, I'm stuck because I have to choose one or the other. So how do I curtail, like how does the OKR process help me curtail one guy to say, okay, you know what, your target is this, but there's a maximum on top of your target as well. Like you can't just go overboard.
So you're saying that you want to curtail your export guy?
Yeah. So I want to tell him that, okay, you know what, you can take up 80 or 85% of my turnover, or, manufacturing capacity rather. You can take up 85% of the capacity, but you can't take orders that are currently like the last time we checked, it was 110%. Like we're not able to manage it.
Yeah, I think the OKR process, basically the goal that is set for him is like a ceiling goal, saying that, look, this goal better not be breached. We wanted to hit this goal, yes, but don't breach it by more than 3, 4, 5%, simply because the input that you require, which is the actual production to happen to service those orders, is not there. The input is constrained, right?
But like, would that sit well? Like that's my only.
There's no other option, right? Like you said, you only have a certain amount of production happening, so there is no point taking on more and more orders if you're not able to go. If you're not going to be able to service them, right? And you've got 2 markets to serve. You've got the domestic market to serve. You've got the export market to serve. You are giving 85% of your production to the export market, so you're really stretching it as much as you can. The only other option is to cut off domestic completely, which basically means cutting off this engine completely for yourself, which will harm you in the long term. You can't afford to do that. So you have no other option till such time that your production capacity increases over the next 2-3 quarters, right?
Okay.
So sometimes, it's a sad situation to be in. You've got demand, but you're constrained by supply. And so you can't go beyond a certain number, but that's the reality. There's no point taking on more than you can manage.
So now, right now we're in the process of increasing capacity, and month on month that is coming up slowly. So in this case, how would I phrase his OKR? Like, would it be a percentage of capacity, or would it be absolute?
I mean, look, you can give an absolute target, with the KR being the absolute increase in capacity that is required to meet those targets, right? And that KR of absolute increase in capacity is owned by the operations guy or the manufacturing guy to make sure that capacity increase is definitely happening, because our sales guy is going and selling orders on the back of that sales capacity or the production capacity going up, right?
Hmm.
So don't it complicated for people saying you keep an eye out on how much production is happening, so you take 85% of the target. No. Agree that over the course of this quarter, production capacity is going to be, let's say, XYZ. You're going to increase production capacity, and 80% of that is going to come to you. So you can go and sell orders worth this much. You should give them that target and make the KR, make the manufacturing guy responsible for that KR, or making sure that production capacity actually goes up by the amount that you wanted to go up by.
Okay. Got it.
All right.
Thank you.
So Ruchika has got a request saying that we'll take feedback first, and then we can obviously come back to the Q&A because we still have another 7-8 minutes. So please take a couple of minutes, fill up your feedback form. It means a lot to both the Ascent team and to us to be able to design the future roundtables better. So won't take you more than a couple of minutes. So please take time and fill up the feedback form. Vikram, I'll answer your question after the next couple of minutes. Once people fill up feedback, I'll answer your question. Ruchika, let me know when I can start taking the questions again.
I think we can wait for 1 more minute and then we can. Neeraj, I think we can start. We're good.
So look, Vikram, even with a small team, and you may not necessarily go and hire somebody for this process, Vikram. We're not for 1 second recommending that. All we're saying is have somebody dedicatedly managing the process. How many founders are you guys, Vikram? 2?
2 of us.
2 of you. Look, the reason I'm uncomfortable with the founder taking on this role is because there are some very tactical things that also this role is required to be doing, Vikram. For example, following up and making sure that people are actually updating their OKRs, setting up the working sessions if required. And sometimes people don't feel very comfortable dealing with the founder in terms of brainstorming and how the OKR tree should play out. You know what I'm saying? So for these 2 reasons, I would not recommend the founders themselves do it. Also because of the fundamental reason that you will have so much on your plate that this will become a massive overhead for you, Vikram, and for your co-founder. So my strong recommendation is you shouldn't do it, with your own bare hands. You can identify somebody in the middle management team or slightly in the senior leadership team to be able to do it for you. You don't have to hire somebody from outside, but try not doing it with your own bare hands. Strongly recommend it.
Interesting. The fact that they might not just open up to us is an important point.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, there are many tactical things that are also required to be done, Vikram, from time to time, right? Sending reminders, please fill up your OKRs on time. Founders won't have the time and they shouldn't have to do all this stuff.
Right. Great.
Aditya?
Thanks.
Aditya?
Yeah, hi. I had like what you were talking about earlier, setting the culture, and also I had initially started something where every day in the morning I would call people from different departments and we would have like a cross-functional team meeting where everyone would discuss what problems they're facing or what needs to be addressed and whatnot. And it was going well to a certain extent, but then after a point, it was like I had to call and follow up with them that, we have to have the meeting or something like that. Yeah. So I know you said the founder should be the one who should ensure the routine is followed and done, but how do you tackle such instances?
Look, Aditya, what I said was the conviction behind the process is something that the founders have to sort of call out very, very clearly. They have to let the entire company know this process is important. It's here to stay. But that's precisely why we say you must have an OKR champion. Because a lot of the stuff around following up on meetings, doing working sessions, decision sessions on debottlenecking stuff which is not moving, that you can't do. You will have to be, you may be a participant in those meetings, but you can go and set up those meetings, right? So which is why we said an OKR champion is very important. So I'm in fact constantly reiterating, don't do it with your own bare hands. It'll become extremely tactical. And as founders, you need to spend your time on far bigger things than actually setting up meetings or setting up follow-up meetings. Right?
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Anybody else? Let's take one more question and then we can break for the day. It's been a lovely audience today in terms of the number of questions that have been asked and the level of engagement that we've seen. But any of the questions that we can take one last question and then we break.
I can share the experience that I had and the challenge that we had. We had an HR who was the OKR champion, and the challenge that we had was, I mean, HR would come to me like every week, and people are not filling up OKRs, right? In spite of several reminders, and this was the practical challenge that we used to face. Wherein, and then I would go and speak, "Bhai, kya ho gaya? Kahan pe dikkat hai?" So I did this for like a couple of quarters, and then I just got really tired, like because this HR would continuously follow up. People would not fill it. They are like, I can do better work than filling these forms, right? This was and we were using tools instead of Excel sheet at that point.
Yeah. So one, look, the HR guy is not the best of the guys to be able to manage business goal articulation. And two, yes, the OKR champion might come to you every now and then saying, I need a push from you to get people to fill up goals. And in one meeting, just pulling up people really badly for not filling up goals will send the message very strongly. Coming from you guys as founders, if you pull up people in a meeting saying, boss, tomorrow OKR updated, kyun nahi hai? The next time don't enter this meeting without the OKR being updated. People will get the will get the riot act read out of them very quickly. So, but the choice of an HR person as an OKR champion is
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna break now. It's almost 6, and it's a Friday evening, and I'm sure all of you have got plans. So thank you again so much for your time. Lovely interacting with all of you. Second time around. Look forward to more sessions in the future as well. Take care and have a good weekend, guys.